expand vaccine eligibility with a boost of doses expected in the coming days.
The most difficult thing is coming to grips with the fact that we're having younger people who are very sick.
As of tomorrow, Ontarians 18 and older living in hotspots will be able to book their vaccine appointment. Plus, a court ruling on the future of Laurentian University, a decision that will have a significant impact on thousands of students.
He was doing everything that he can to make sure that his mom and his two younger brother survive.
A farm worker's death while in quarantine raises calls for better protections for migrant workers.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk. Starting tomorrow morning, Ontarians 18 and up living in hotspots will be able to book a vaccine appointment at mass immunization clinics or through public health units. The province says this is due to a stable and reliable increase in vaccine supply. The sites include the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, Scarborough Town Centre, and the Toronto Congress Centre in Mississauga. Appointments can be made on the province's website starting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. The expansion of vaccinations comes after a grim milestone. There are now more than 900 patients in Ontario's ICUs. It is the threshold that many believed would kickstart medical triage, where the capacity for care would have to be rationed. Talia Ricci shows us how Ontario has so far avoided that scenario and what could change that.
Now, we do have
During this third wave, doctors have no time to slow down.
I'm sorry, I gotta take this one call. I'm sorry, give me one second.
That's okay.
Hello.
But this emergency room physician found a few minutes to describe what he sees on the inside.
I think the most difficult thing is coming to grips with the fact that we're having younger people who are very sick. A lot of them are requiring ICU, but there's no ICU space.
Today, hospitalizations dropped below 2,000 for the first time in 2 weeks. But Ontario ICU admissions hit a record high this weekend, rising to 900. Health officials had warned it would be a breaking point, bringing hard decisions about who gets life-saving care.
The triage tool is not in place. We're working as hard as humanly possible, our clinicians and the staff in hospitals, to make sure that it never comes into effect. But I can't say with complete confidence that it will never happen.
For weeks now, extraordinary measures have been taken to relieve pressure, delaying tens of thousands of surgeries, putting adults into pediatric wards, building field hospitals, accepting help from the armed forces, and transferring a record high number of patients. But now a new concern. A critical link in those patient transfers, Orange paramedics are prepared to go on strike.
During the third wave, we have countless members working more than 60 hours a week to prevent Ontario's ICUs from collapse.
They're protesting provincial legislation that caps public sector wage increases to 1% a year. They have to give notice before they can strike.
Striking for us is the absolute last consideration.
Even though the triage model hasn't been activated in Ontario, doctors have already received the training.
We've heard about this for a few months, and I always thought there's no way that we'll get to that, but sometimes it feels like we're days from it or weeks from it at least. Some days feel like that can actually happen.
And that possibility, he says, weighs on him.
Yeah.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
We have some breaking news tonight on the fate of Laurentian University. A Chief Justice has just ruled that the university was legally right in severing ties with its federated schools. Two of them, the University of Sudbury and Thornloe University, had challenged the decision in court. Now, this decision allows the university to continue with its restructuring process, but it seals the fate of its Indigenous and Francophone programs. Laurentian declared insolvency in February, and since then, it has announced cuts to dozens of academic programs, faculty, staff, and non-unionized members. Creditor protection for the university is extended until August 31st. Now, for reaction to the ruling, I'm joined by Connor LaFortune, who is a second-year student at Laurentian University, doing a major in Indigenous Studies and a double minor in Law and Justice and Women and Gender and Sexuality Studies. Connor, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of this court ruling that Laurentian can now cut ties with the University of Sudbury and Thornlow University?
I think we all knew that that's what was coming. I think that when the decision came out, we knew that it was going to be the legal decision and that the ties were going to be severed and the Francophone and Indigenous programs were going to be lost.
Now, I'd like to know a little bit more about your situation. We know you're a second-year student and you've got roots firmly planted in that university now. What has all this done to your education?
Well, not only as a Francophone person, but as an Indigenous person, this means a loss of a discipline, a loss of a home. I know a lot of us had really planted our roots, like you said, at Laurentian University, not only in the institution, but in the community itself. I know myself, I had to move to Sudbury in order to start my education here. It means the loss of an option for French students. For a lot of us studying in Ontario, we only have 3 options. And now one of our options has already been limited. And so when I came to Laurentian, I came for the tricultural mandate. I could be both a Francophone and Indigenous person when entering the institution. And for me, this decision means that I have to leave my Francophonie behind now when entering my new institution.
Lots of decisions for you to make. And you talked about what makes Laurentian University so unique is that tricultural mandate. What has your experience, though, in the last 2 years been like at this institution?
I think Laurentian has brought me so many beautiful opportunities. I've had the opportunity to be the Vice President and Male Traditional Coordinator on the Indigenous Student Circle at Laurentian, a Francophone representative on the Law Council, and so many beautiful events and committees that I've been able to join. And it's brought me so many beautiful things and teachers, and not only in the academic sense, but teachers in the sense of traditional sense of being knowledge holders and elders for my future. And so for me, letting go is a lot more than just changing universities, but really having to find a new home.
And to me, it sounds like you're describing a place that is truly unique, and that if you had gone to another post-secondary institution, it's not an experience that you would have had elsewhere.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, as both a Francophone and Indigenous person, like I could have my services in French, I could take my program that describes the people that I'm from these territories, from the Robinson-Huron Treaty. There is no other program that offers me both those things.
So having said all that, Connor, I guess the question is, and the difficult question is, what's next for you?
Sadly for me, it means I have to transfer universities and leave behind this beautiful community that I've created. It might mean also having to completely move and reroute physically for next year because the program that I applied for is no longer offered, and I know that they had offered to change the program a little bit, but it's not what I signed up for, and it's not what I want to pursue my education in.
Can you sort of put into words what the loss of these kinds of programs means for the wider university community?
I think it shows what programs are really validated in the sense of the institution. I think as minorities, it's a little harder to get that support. And you could really see that with how the cuts have been done for the institutions, that those minority programs, those French programs, those Indigenous programs, those cultural things, even in women, gender, sexuality, those are the first to go. And I think it's sad, but it's true to the history of Canada.
Connor, this was important insight to get from you. I appreciate you joining me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's Connor LaFortune, a second-year student at Laurentian University. Well, advocates for migrant farm workers are demanding better protection after 3 migrant workers died just this past week. Last year, 3 other workers died from COVID-19 after arriving in Ontario. And a recent report by Ontario's Deputy Chief Coroner outlines steps to make conditions safer for workers. Dahlia Ashry has the details.
He was doing everything that he can to make sure that his mom and his 2 younger brother survive.
Roshina Jack is left remembering and mourning her younger brother, 22-year-old Romario Morgan from St. Vincent. He was quarantining in a hotel in Mississauga, and his cousin was too. And when he didn't hear from Morgan, his cousin asked for someone to check up on him. Morgan was found dead in his room this past Thursday.
He was just there lying. There's no blood, nothing.
Jack says her brother had his first vaccine in March. Morgan is just one of many other migrant workers who come to Ontario for a better life. Chris Ramsaroop is a migrant workers advocate. He says Morgan is one of 3 who've died this past week.
One gentleman was from Trinidad and Tobago, one worker was from Mexico, and one worker was from St. Vincent. Very little details have emerged as a result of any of these deaths.
And last year, Bonifacio Eugenio Romero, Juan Lopez Chaparro, and one other man died after contracting COVID-19 after arriving to work on Ontario farms.
A heightened immigration risk, compelled or coupled with precarious working and living conditions, is a recipe for this crisis that exists currently in COVID.
Ontario's Deputy Chief Coroner Reuven Girard outlined in a recent report 35 recommendations to make conditions safer for temporary foreign agricultural workers.
Ensure that they're informed about the processes, right? Accessing healthcare, their rights to the access of that care, the privacy rights they have, the rights within the Ministry of Labor, the access and the necessities of any public health mandates that exist.
The Ministry of Agriculture says they are carefully reviewing the recommendations. In a statement to CBC, they say they are working on a number of things. For example, setting up a clinic at Toronto Pearson International Airports to make vaccines available to temporary foreign workers. And a statement from the Ministry of Labour says, as part of Ontario's outbreak management response, inspectors will conduct proactive occupational health and safety visits at Ontario farms. But Ramsaroop says more needs to be done.
It's a plantation system that exists in Ontario, and we are calling for a permanent status. No worker should be tied to a farm. No worker should be tied to an employer.
Morgan's autopsy was on Friday, and the family is still awaiting the results. Dahlia Ashery, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police say their team dedicated to dispersing large gatherings has laid about 230 charges in the past week.
We've answered approximately 305 incidents throughout the city. A bulk of these calls primarily were in the downtown core.
The police have focused on large indoor gatherings taking place at short-term rentals and enclosed bars and restaurants. And most of the calls are for reports coming from downtown Toronto. Police add they're continuing to discourage people from attending large gatherings or parties. There's a live look at Toronto tonight. It has been a cloudy, even rainy weekend for us. So we'll check in with Sophia for our first look at the forecast. And I mean, you had us prepped for this, just to expect the cloud and expect the rain.
It was really hit or miss depending on where you were. You might have squeaked out without any rain at all if you were kind of around the Bend, Burlington, Oakville. If you were in Windsor, it was a taste of summer with nearly 30 degrees, the hot spot in parts of Ontario. And then, yeah, if you were in the GTA or anywhere east, Peterborough, Barrie, well, it's raining now, and it was pretty much all throughout the day. So it was the tale of two seasons today. Around 8 around the Bend right now, 9 in the city of Hamilton, 11 in downtown, and those showers are still persistent for those of you in Barrie and Peterborough and in the east end of the GTA. And things get a little more widespread as we head into tomorrow, 10 to 15 millimeters, and temperatures will take a bit of a dip as well. We should be around 16 this time of year. You will be hard-pressed to find that downtown and around the lake shores, and overcast will be continuing the name of the game over the past next few days, rather. The next few days. The rain that we had today actually brings up a bit more of a boundary that will make widespread rain Monday into Tuesday, maybe even lingering into Wednesday, when the sunshine will look to come out. I'll tell you more in the long range.
Okay, that'll be good to find out. We'll see you in a bit. Thanks, Sophia.
Do we invest into this, or do we, walk away from this?
The facility that's hosted national cricket players is in jeopardy. A 12,000 square foot indoor sportsplex now sits empty. That story coming up next. India's daily COVID-19 cases fell only slightly from yesterday's record, and today saw a new national one-day high, 3,689 deaths. The current surge overwhelming hospitals has pushed total recorded deaths past 215,000. A 10th state imposed restrictions today. Reports say India's pandemic task force is urging a national lockdown. That's something the government wants to avoid after a staggering drop in economic output during last year's lockdown. Back here at home, it's believed to be Canada's most advanced indoor cricket facility. But just 2 years after opening, Fat Sportsplex in Vaughan is now facing the possibility of closing permanently. Like so many businesses right now, it's struggling to keep its doors open with changing pandemic restrictions. And it's a blow for those who rely on the facility, including a member of Canada's national team. Farah Morali has the story.
These days, the doors are locked at Rafa Abdul's business because of pandemic restrictions. His 12,000 square foot cricket facility now stands empty, just turf and wickets.
It's just been mostly an emotional roller coaster ride for this whole pandemic.
The ride of opening and closing multiple times has put Abdul into a challenging financial position.
It became really difficult for us as a business to operate. Well, we've been surviving, but we're on a very thin ice right now because what happens next, we're not sure how long this pandemic lockdown third wave is going to go on.
Fat Sportsplex opened to a lot of fanfare 2 years ago, touting itself as the first of its kind indoor cricket facility in the country, with full-size pitches where players could train during the cold winter months. Legendary Australian cricketer Glenn McGrath was even on hand for the opening.
To have the opportunity to come here and open this facility, it's a nice honour.
Abdul says cricket has only become more popular in the GTA thanks to the influx of immigrants from places like India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka over the past decade. And there's been no shortage of business.
When we were last month open 24/7, I was booked 2,500 hours in that month. So we are self-sufficient to pay the operating costs. I just cannot afford to just sit and pay for an empty facility, right? That's what's hurting.
For those who live and breathe cricket, this facility is home.
In my mind, the best in Canada.
There was one game in particular where his fastest delivery was 147 kilometers per hour.
Jeremy Gordon is a member of the Canadian national cricket team. Pre-pandemic, he says he was at Fat Sportsplex 4 to 5 times a week. He's what's known as a fast bowler, meaning he needs a full-length cricket pitch to train indoors.
I've never actually experienced a facility where I have a full run where I can actually, utilize it to the best of my ability.
Abdul is holding on to the possibility that restrictions will be loosened.
May 22nd, things open up, but for how long? So do we invest into this or do we, walk away from this?
His hope to keep these lights on for as long as he can to prevent this community hub from disappearing.
It would be a sad day because a lot of heart and soul went into this.
Farah Morali, CBC News, Vaughan.
Not going to end once we go back on site. We will continue virtual schools because of the reach, because of the culture that we can bring to students who are outside of Toronto, who cannot actually come into the doors of the AGO.
How online programs are bringing more guests to Toronto's museums, all without opening a single door during the pandemic. That's coming up. 4 astronauts returned to Earth last night, and they did it in a way NASA hasn't done in half a century. It was the first time since 1968's Apollo 8 mission that an American-built capsule splashed down at night. The crew, 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from Japan's space agency, were returning after more than 5 months on the International Space Station, a record for a mission launching from a U.S.-built craft. Well, May is Museum Month, and even though museums in Ontario haven't been able to welcome in-person visitors, they say they've been seeing a surge in their online programs from people across Canada. And in particular, the virtual school programs have been a big success.
I really wanted to have that live engagement that we have in the gallery with art educators and with students. So standing in front of a piece of art and asking the educator, asking the students, what do you see? And them being able to respond. So our sessions are live, and they do reach, we have a geographic reach way more than we ever would have in the gallery. So we really are meeting Ontario, actually quite national.
Their programs have seen more than 500,000 guests since last October. Their virtual school series invites students to learn about different topics, from interpreting a painting to techniques for making your own pieces. The Royal Ontario Museum is also turning to online events to show off some of their latest exhibits free of charge. According to the AGO, the large turnout means the online programs are here to stay, even after the pandemic. There's a live look at our nation's capital tonight, where it is 12 degrees. And Sophia is back with our long-range forecast. I mean, at least it's double digits, I guess, is all I can say.
For the really, really, really short range. Yeah, welcome to early spring. Again, how does that sound? Maybe okay for the flowers, not so good for the muddy dog paws, unless you like that sort of thing on the floors. 9, and the showers continue constant into the overnight period. The low of 6, be chilly with a bit of an east wind. A rainy start to the week and a bit of an unsettled pattern. Below seasonal will be the name of the game as we head into what might be a chilly Mother's Day weekend as well. Rain showers will continue throughout the day on Monday. Your high will be on the low side of seasonal, especially with that east wind. Be really chilly off any of the lake shores for those of you there. We should be about 16 this time of year, but for those of you around the GTA, we'll be hard pressed to find that throughout much of this upcoming work week. We've got 10, a 13, a 10, and 11 all throughout the rest of this upcoming work week. We're about 6 degrees below seasonal, except for Tuesday, and that's a day when we will have an extra southerly flow that comes with, yes, you guessed it, some more rain and moisture. There's this big stateside system. We're just on the northern fringe of it, but we'll have more of a push of that southerly flow and that rain on Tuesday. And along with it will come a little bit of convective energy. So I wouldn't rule out a pop-up, an isolated thunderstorm to come through with that rain on Tuesday, but your temperatures will be back up to seasonal. They take a dip back down for Wednesday, but that's when we could have a little taste of sunshine if this next system doesn't decide to visit us as well. We're right on the really, really northern tip right now. Maybe Niagara sees a shower or two, but things could change. We are still early out, and then we're chilly into the weekend, folks. Have a look at Mother's Day weekend. Not the greatest weather when it comes to planting those Mother's Day flowers, and we're not really looking at sustained heat until the end of May. There's actually a chance even for some hard freezes, which is not such a good news for any of the orchards who bloomed so early this year. Maribel.
Oh, well, yeah, those plants are so confused right now.
No.
All right. Thanks, Sophia. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching, and remember, you can stay caught up on news anytime on our website at cbcnews.ca. As we go, here's a look at Niagara Falls for you. Have a great night, everyone.